All right. So what I've done is just a little bit of prep work. I don't know how I'm going to manage all this. We'll see. So I've done a little bit of prep work on this install to make sure we're not having to spend a bunch of time setting up themes and stuff like that. So I've gone through and set up the theme, the header, stuff like that. I didn't figure y'all needed to see me do all that. I just dropped a link in the Zoom chat that takes you to the live URL we'll be working on in case you want to look at it on the front end and critique me. That's fine. So here's the plugins I have installed and activated. Code snippets, Fluent Forms, because we do have a form in here, GenerateBlocks and GenerateBlocks Pro, the GeneratePress Premium theme, Kadence Blocks and Kadence Pro, Perf Matters, which we don't really need for this, but it's just in my starter site. SEO Press, Stackable, because I want to explore that a tiny little bit.
Oh, there's a webinar. Remember, I mentioned it yesterday.
Sorry. And then SVG support, because I'm uploading some SVG. So I've already uploaded all the assets, things like that. I've set up the theme where I have the header, a little footer in here, and this wave site is got this hard container on it at like, whoa, I just screwed up. Can y'all still see my screen? Okay, I locked myself out of the computer. It's got this hard container at like 1600 pixels. So I just mimic that. There's the live site. So that's our starting point here. She was going to say, okay, so I usually obviously am going to develop things in two different monitors so I can have one to look at and one while I'm working. I'm going to try to do all this in one screen so everybody can see everything that's going on, but who knows if that'll slow me down or not. And lastly, there's going to be a few bits in here where I know we're going to have to write some CSS. So y'all will just have to forgive me and yell at the screen while I'm writing CSS because it's not my strong suit. 1 year ago today, I couldn't have spelt CSS. So the fact that I can write any of it today is kind of a miracle for me. So what we'll do here is we're going to just start off on this page. I'm going to have the customizer open in another window because that's really handy when you're building. I found with GenerateBlocks to be able to open in the customizer and switch between the previews. It's a little bit cleaner than the previews in the backend editor. And then we have the actual wave. Try to mute people as I hear them talking, but I'm doing 50 things at once. Okay. All right, let's do this thing. All right, pages. And y'all feel free to just, I mean, we're just hanging out. So if you have something to say, say it. If you want to ask something, ask it. I'm going to try to not talk this entire time because it will make me insane. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is drop a container in this page. Let's go ahead and look at it. So we have just a basic hero section with an image back here, text kind of in a left-hand column, a button. Obviously, I did go through all this pretty carefully before we started this, but the background image does change on once we go to tablet, and then it stays the same on mobile. So we'll have to account for that as we're developing this little hero section. So what we'll do here inside this hero section, I'm going to give it a little padding. The other thing I'll say too is I'm not going to try to do like a pixel for pixel recreation of this page. We're going to eyeball things. Like we're going to get the padding close, the font sizes close and things like that. I'm not too concerned with us being perfectly perfect. So we'll set some padding on there. And then because we're going to have to change the background, depending on the device size, we'll have to go in here into the advanced background settings. These are all GenerateBlocks blocks here. So we'll add a background, an image, and this one will be for just the desktop. We'll drop in this image, and then we'll have to add another background, and this one will be for the tablet and mobile. And we'll drop in this second image here. Close that, and we'll just test that it's working. So if we go to tablet, it switches the backgrounds. That's perfect. All right, so we have just this text in the left-hand side. I'm gonna go ahead and copy that to my clipboard.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep, go for it.
How much of this did you set up in the customizer before, if anything? Like what do you set up in the customizer? What do you set up in blocks?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So we'll look here in the customizer. I went through and set up the header. So the logo, the navigation. I set all the typography settings. I set my color palette is all here inside the theme. So, you know, my ideal hierarchy is like, if I can set it at the theme level, I want to do it there. If I can set it, if I can't set it there, if I can do it inside the GenerateBlocks global styles, I'll do it inside there, because that can trickle across the whole site and I can control it globally. And then if I can't do it there, then I'm doing it on an individual element level or writing CSS for it. So as many things as I can do style inside the theme, that's what I'm going to do, just to try to make life easier on picking colors and fonts and all that stuff. I went through and set all the font sizes, so we probably won't even have to fiddle with that as we build this out. So I'm going to just keep using GenerateBlocks unless I say otherwise, because that's typically what works best for me. So here we have our H1 heading. We need to change the color of it. Usually I'll do that at the container level in case we end up putting something else in here down the road. It's going to be white as well, instead of just making the headline white. And then underneath that, we're going to have a button. And let's see here. Rounded corners, go to your account, white outline, hover, white. Perfect. All right. We need to add some margin here. Background color clear, border color white, text color. It was blue, wasn't it? No, it was white, of course. And then hover. We're going to do a background color of white. The text was black. The border color was white. We need to give it a border, 1 pixel. Give it a border radius. That looks pretty decent. Margin looks kind of funky. The padding in there. All right. And what did this say? Go to your account. Well, y'all are going to have to speak up and talk, because I can already tell I'm not going to be able to talk my way through all of this.
Any reason why you prefer Kadence over something like Blocksy or anything else?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Any reason why you chose Kadence over like Blocksy for the theme?
So I'm using the GeneratePress theme on here. I use GeneratePress on pretty much everything. It's just where I'm most comfortable. So that goes right into my starter site, and I use that constantly.
Okay.
All right, so desktop, this looks pretty fine.
So Kyle, I have a question about your backgrounds. Do you choose full cover? What did you choose on this one?
Yeah, so I just left it at the defaults. We'll go back to that. I'm going to set this container to 100% because I think that's what it does here. So when we get down to tablet, yeah, it pretty much takes up the whole thing. My padding's probably not quite right, but we're close enough. Same thing on mobile, so we should be good here. All right, so yeah, so on the background image, because I was switching it depending on the browser size, I did all that under these advanced backgrounds, and it defaulted to exactly what we needed, which was size, cover, position, center, and no repeat. Of course, you can play with all these things in here, but for this particular setup, that was absolutely fine for both of these.
Okay.
So there we go. We got one section set up. Take a look at it on the front end. All right, y'all holler at me if you see me make huge glaring mistakes, okay?
I have a question. When you did the button, so in builders, can you use classes like you can in something like Oxygen or Bricks? I think that's the one thing I would miss. I go back and forth between Oxygen and the Kadence theme, the blocks.
Yeah, so you can, but it's not like Oxygen where everything's centered around like building out the classes. It's not like class first. So I could go in here, not style this button at all, and then go into the advanced and give it a CSS, give it a class, and then go write CSS for it. But it's kind of the backwards way to do it in a builder like this, you know, whereas in Oxygen, that's like the natural, you're going to give it a class, you're going to style that class and then reuse it everywhere, which is a lot better for, you know, being able to maintain the site and grow the site in the future and all that. It's definitely a better system. Same thing in Webflow. You build everything that way. Unfortunately, it's not like that in here. Now, if I was building this entire website out, I probably would have just gone into GenerateBlocks global styles and created a global style for this button, which allows you to create multiple global styles. And then I can reuse that throughout the site. And if I ever need to change it, I can go into that global style and change it. So that's what I would do if I was building out this whole site. For demo purposes, I didn't figure it made a whole lot of sense to go in there and set up a bunch of like global styles since I was just building out one page.
I wouldn't mind seeing that if you have a chance, though, Kyle.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Just
if we
maybe
end
just
up
for
with
one
extra
element.
time, we'll go back.
Okay.
All right, perfect.
So
So
your global styles is easier for you than using a, than putting that block in a reusable section.
yeah, and I don't really mess with the reusable sections unless it's truly something that I'm going to reuse exactly verbatim without any changes from one page to another. Otherwise, the global styles is definitely the way to go. So in GenerateBlocks, you can use the headline block to do paragraph level elements. And I usually prefer that over just the default paragraph element because you have more controls over the spacing and everything. So on this one, it looks like the container is a little bit smaller. So this div is about 950 pixels. So we can actually go on this section and set the container width to 950 pixels. We also ought to change the tag name to HTML or to section to keep it semantic here. And so this section should be fairly simple.
Kyle, can I ask quick question? What was that tool that just showed up all of a sudden with all the?
Yeah, so this is a browser extension called Hoverify. So it allows you to like inspect elements, grab colors, download assets. So when I downloaded stuff off this side, I clicked on the assets and then just downloaded everything off this page. You can check all the built with information. You can do screen captures. They have a couple of keyboard shortcuts that I use all the time. So one is Alt-I, and that allows me to inspect any element on here. So just a second ago, I was looking for the width of this little container. It's going crazy on me. So I was able to just do Control or Alt-I and then see that this, let me click on it. This div is 950 pixels wide. So I was able to set that container based off that, just quick and easy type thing. And they also have Alt-C, which will give you a color picker. So I'll use this when I have to grab colors that aren't in my library. It's a super handy little tool. All right, so we got that second section done. Now we get to here, we have kind of these alternating back and forth image, text, text, image, and it does that 4 times. They're basically all the same. They just flip flop and have different content inside of them. So let's get after it. We'll drop in another container here and we'll change it to a section. Spacing, we'll stick with what I've been doing. We probably need to go back and adjust some of that for mobile.
Is the 24 for the right and left arbitrary, or is that?
Yeah, so it's kind of my default in my head when I'm building out sites. I'll usually go with 24 on the left and right. I try to stick to like an 8-point system.
Right.
So it's kind of my default to kind of start there. I didn't measure what it is on Wave. Like I said, I'm not trying to do it pixel perfect, but that'll just give us enough that nothing ever bumps right up into the edge. All right, so we'll stick a grid in here. Inside this grid, we need a little bit of gap between these columns. We'll say 80 pixels and we can play with that. So on the left-hand side, we need an image. We'll start out with just using the image widget that's straight from WordPress, and we can look at why it's not fantastic. So it does fine. It puts an image in there, but your options are very limited in what you can do with that image, sizing it and all those kinds of things. I have hell with their little image dimensions things. It never seems to work right for me. But for a case like this, for a scenario like this, it's going to be fine because we're just sticking an image in here. I'll grab this headline.
A quick question, Kyle.
Yeah.
When you insert a container and you change the tag to a section, what exactly does that do?
So in the HTML, if you went and inspected this page, you would see in the HTML, I think it defaults to every section just being a div, which has no semantic meaning to it. So screen readers and stuff might have problems with that. So I try to be careful about going back and naming things properly when I can. I'm not an expert on it. So usually it's just change everything to section is about as scientific as I get with it. But that way, at least semantically, we know what each parts of these websites are instead of just a div, which is pretty meaningless.
Right. Okay.
And anybody correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. I'm certainly no expert. All right, so we have this little free badge. I don't know why on this page, this bugs me. I feel like these little badges should be above the headings. I don't know why it bugs me so much, but we'll do it like they did it. So I use the heading block, and then I'm just using a div for it. They actually use a span on here. I don't think it makes a huge difference. We could use a paragraph too, but I don't have the option for span in here. So let's see, we want to change this to, in fact, I typed it capitalized. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to transform it to uppercase. I think they're 12-point font, maybe 13. Change the letter spacing a little bit. And then we need to grab this color. So I don't think I saved this little teal color. I'll grab it. And we'll change the background color here to that teal. Change the text color to white. All right, so in the spacing, I need a little bit of padding on either side of it. 8's probably enough. We need to change the border radius a little bit. And then we need this to be inline width. So that'll keep it from being a box level element and taking up the whole width there. So that's, get that off the screen. That's pretty close. Probably close enough for this. All right, so let's grab some text. Again, I almost always use the heading widget in GenerateBlocks instead of the actual paragraph one that's inside WordPress. Just because now, like, I have this problem of these things are too close to each other, and I can easily space them out using the options inside this headline block. All right, then we have learn about accounting. It's a blue button. It's kind of similar to this one, except the colors are different. So what I'll probably do here is grab a button, and I'm going to copy the style of this one. So you can copy styles, go on here, paste those styles. And then we got a background color of blue, text color of white. We can really kill off this border. We don't necessarily need that. Sorry.
For text, can you use, I don't see it as a choice, at least not with generate blocks, whatever it is. Can you use Rems or even a clamp function if you wanted to?
Yeah, unfortunately you can't. I brought that up in their group the other day. Is inside of the blocks, they give you the option to specify pixels, ems, or percentage. I would really prefer to do rem for everything. In GeneratePress, the theme, they have rem for all the typography settings, but they don't have rem available for any of your spacing settings. So you can't set like your default margins or space between anything like that. In rem, it's pixels, em, or percentage on that as well. So it's a give and take for sure. I would prefer it to be another way, but they don't have that option here. You could write CSS for all of it, but that's probably beyond what I'm going to end up doing. All right, so here we go. I think this pretty much completes this little section. Oh, actually, we need to center align these vertically. So we can do that inside this grid here, mark them center. We'll update that and we'll go look at it here on the front end. It's looking like the real page here. So we're making progress. So what we could do, we have a couple options here. We could use this same section and just continue adding containers to this grid and flip-flop the order of them. Where it gets a little bit tricky in this design is the spacing between things vertically at different positions. So what I think I'm going to do is, and for the purpose of time, we're just going to duplicate this entire section. I'm going to go up here to the container that wraps around this image and flop it to the other side. And that will make things nice and quick and easy on us. So now it's time to copy and paste. So now is a great time if anybody has questions.
So you were so fast when you duplicated it. I didn't even see how you did that. Sorry.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm trying not to make it an exact tutorial exactly on everything.
Oh, yeah, no,
obviously,
but
I want to explain. So I try to use keyboard shortcuts as much as I can. And now this is bugging out on me. I stuck a link in here. I didn't mean to. So if you click on a section in here and hit Control Shift D inside of the WordPress editor will, I'm just gonna do this again. It will duplicate a section. Alt Shift Z will delete something. So those are two of the shortcuts that I use quite often. Man, this just went all kinds of funky on me. Headline, this one. I think I just lost it. We'll start again. Look, all my controls bugged out on me. My little toolbar is not showing up. So we're gonna have to refresh this page. All right, I see that. Sorry, I didn't see the chat. I hadn't been able to monitor that too. I'll show you how I flip the columns on there as well. Paste that text in
There
there.
were a couple of questions about what theme you were using. I think you said Kadence.
I'm using GeneratePress on this.
GeneratePress.
Yeah. Let me double check what I did on this spacing here since I got rid of it on the other one. So yes, I'm using GeneratePress Pro as the theme on here. Almost everything I've built so far has been with a GenerateBlocks block or with the standard ones that come out of WordPress. We will be using some Kadence ones and maybe some stackable ones here in the future. As far as flip-flopping those things, it kind of is nice to have this little list view open as you're building. Obviously, it does take up more screen real estate, but inside this grid, there's two containers, this one on the left, this one on the right. So I just went up to the container on the left. We got somebody giving major feedback. There we go. I went to the container on the left here, and there's an up and down arrow, which is moving it in the order of the HTML. So you can just move it left or right, basically by going up or down. So that's how I flip-flop those. All right, so this one I think says invoices, and we need to switch out this photo. All right, so we'll look at this first of these sections here. When we go down to tablet, this is exactly what Wave is doing on theirs. Is they're still keeping like a side-by-side column kind of thing on tablet, and then once it collapses down to mobile, they're stacking everything on top of each other. So here on tablet, we're fine with that, but when we go to mobile, this first section is fine as far as it's stacking the image and then the text. But on this one, since we flip-flopped it, now it's text, then image. So what we'll have to do here is get inside this container. Here's the one for the text. And it gives us the option here to change the order. So I can change the order of that one to 2. And then just to be double sure, I'll go ahead and change the other one to 1, even though it flips them anyways. So now we're back to image, text, image, text. We probably have too much padding on some of these. I don't know how much time we want to screw with messing with padding in a demo like this. I figure you know what padding is, but we'll do it anyways. All right, so we'll save that. Y'all should be able to, I'll drop that link here in the Zoom chat again. If anybody wants to look at this on the front end, you can pull that page up. All right, so let's just cook through these last 2 of these so we don't waste a ton of time. I'm just going to duplicate that section and move it down. I'm going to grab this section, duplicate it, and move it down. So we should be good there, and copy and paste. Questions while I copy and paste? Is there anything in the chat that I missed?
I have a quick question about the grid. So you used a grid instead of columns. Is that because it's easier to manipulate padding and other details?
Yeah, so I've never really messed with the columns that come with just WordPress because the one inside GenerateBlocks works so well. So I just kind of default to using the grid, which is your way to make columns inside GenerateBlocks. I've tested out as many of the block packages as I could get my hands on, and probably more than I even needed to fool with. And I just feel so much more comfortable inside GenerateBlocks. I think because the options are so much more simple, and we'll look at that when we open when we have to use some Kadence blocks here in a minute. it's just, there's so many more options in it, which is a good thing and a bad thing. So there's a lot more options in it, so you can do a lot more with it, which is great. But at the same time, when I'm just trying to like, I feel like I don't know why this didn't want to copy and paste. Simplify your payroll. What did it say?
Few people were asking about copying and pasting between pages.
Uh-huh.
If
Okay.
that was something doable.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me finish my one thought here. So one thing that's nice about Kadence is you have tons of options. The bad part about that is you also have tons of options. So sometimes I feel like I'm back inside Elementor with like way too many things to play with that are just kind of getting in my way. So that's one of the things I really like about GenerateBlocks, GeneratePress, that whole ecosystem kind of as a family, is they really try to stick with things and make them as simple as you can get away with, which is something that I enjoy working with. And then, yeah, so copying and pasting, you can not only can you copy and paste between pages on the website, I could copy and paste these blocks onto an entire other website. So let's just say I wanted to copy this entire section here. I can highlight the section. I'm going to press Control-C. You see it was copied to my clipboard. We'll just go to my website. Hopefully I have a password saved in here. Pages. We'll drop it on my about page. Why not? So we'll go down here to, come on. My internet is very slow, so apologies for that. So we can paste this here. And now I've just pasted that entire section that I built in this other site right onto my website. Obviously it's inheriting some of the theme settings and some of the global colors and things like that. But that's one thing that's great about blocks, is how easy it is to move things from one to the other. So not only can you just do sections like that, if you click the little menu button in the top right corner, you can copy all content, and that will copy all the blocks on the page, and then you could go paste that somewhere else as well. So it's pretty handy. All right, so let's check our work here before we get into a completely different section. It's looking fine on desktop. We'll check tablet. It's looking fine on tablet. And we'll check mobile. I think we probably got some spacing issues here. I probably want some more space in between these image containers and the text below them. We'll go ahead and do that. It won't take but a second. So on mobile here, this container, I'm going to just add a little bit of margin to the bottom of that. Sorry, I'm going fast. I just want to fix it. So now it'll bother me. And I think I saw Mike Oliver inside this call, and if I don't fix every little detail, he'll be scoffing at me later. So I have to fix these things so I don't get chastised. And if anybody's interested, I posted a link inside, I think the post of this inside the group, but I learned how to use GenerateBlocks from start to finish from Mike's course. It's absolutely fantastic. I do have a affiliate link here if anybody wants it. It's a absolutely fantastic course, and will teach you basically everything you need to know to get up and running. After I watched that course, I went and built a site with blocks, and then rebuilt my entire site with blocks within a couple days. So it definitely would teach you everything you know. And I'm sure there's plenty of people in here who have taken it too. I see in the comments. All right, perfect. Cough break. All right, so next little section is just this little call to action. We could stick this in that same grid if we wanted to, but I'm probably just going to do another little section for it. It takes up the full width here. Let's see what it does on tablet and mobile. So on tablet, it's just going to be the same. Once we get to mobile, I'm guessing they're going to stack. They stack up and the corners kind of change here. So that should be fairly easy. Jump out of here. We'll add us a new section. And we'll change that to section. We'll give this just a little bit of space. And then to really control how this background is going to work, I'm actually going to stick a container inside of a container. So now I can control this completely separately. So we need to set up the background, and it's going to be a gradient. So my guess is they're using this blue color that we already used inside of our palette, but we're also going to have to use this purple color. So let me grab something that's at least close to it. We'll drop this at the other stop here. All right. And then we need to give it some spacing, and it looked like the spacing, you know, if you look around this button, it's pretty even all the way around. So we'll stick to 24 pixels of padding. And then we need to change the border radius on here. I'm just going to put something giant, like 100 in there, so I know the corners are rounded. I know that's probably not the best way to do it, but it'd work. And then I'm going to do a grid with just 2 columns, just so we can put the text on the left, the button on the right. We can probably offset these a little bit so it doesn't get too cramped on mobile. So this looks like a much smaller heading to H3. All right, so we'll drop a heading in here. H3, and then GenerateBlocks automatically puts some margin on these headings. I'm going to take that out of there so we can try to center it up as best we can. I think we're gonna have some line height issues on here, but we can fix it. We'll change the text color of this section to white. Drop a button in here. I think we can probably copy this and get a good start on things. We'll right align the button. All right, that's a start. What does it say? Start now. Start now. And we need to get these colors. All right, so here's more than likely the regular color. And more than likely that's the hover color. I'm not going to go double check. I'm sure it's close. And the text color. All right, so we have an issue with this not being perfectly vertically aligned. Oh, our grids probably needs to be set to center. So we can center align that. That's better. But it looks like even though this padding is the same all the way around, just optically, this looks too close to the edge. So I'm actually going to grab this container and I'm going to give it a little bit more margin or padding on the left. Go look at this on the front end. Yeah, I think that looks more centered, even though it's not. All right, so tablet, we should be okay on this, fine on that. We're gonna have problems when we get to mobile. Yeah, okay, so let's check this out. We have the container inside the container. I know we need to change the border radius on this. We'll just try 12. It's probably even less than that. We need to center align this heading. We can do that. This button, we need to center align it as well. I just added the weird margin on our padding on there, so we need to get rid of that. We need a little bit of spacing. I'll just do it at the bottom of this heading. It's probably pretty close. It's funny when it's, oh, it does go all the way to the edge. I thought a minute ago there was margin around it. Oh, now it's gone funky on me. It does. It goes all the way to the edge here. So we can go in here and on mobile, just take all of our left and right padding off of that container. And then I guess we don't need the rounded corners at all. Could have swore I saw that like inside a little box earlier.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay, good. I've not lost my mind. Okay, whoops, there we go. All right, so there's the actual live one. Let me refresh this page.
Question
if you-
about whether or not you can set different breakpoints, have more than 3.
So there's probably a way to add some code into GeneratePress and set more breakpoints in there, but in GenerateBlocks, I don't know of a way off the top of my head. So it's basically just desktop, tablet, and mobile. There are some, most of the time, I don't find that being a huge problem. Look, we got funkiness again. What happened? Most of the time, I don't find that being a huge problem. And if it is just something that can't be avoided, I'll usually end up just writing media queries for whatever I need. But yeah, that is certainly a limitation. There's a lot more breakpoints inside of something like Oxygen or Webflow or something where you can add a bunch. All right, so what do we got up next? Any questions while I take a quick drink break? Look, Sam just dropped a link to setting breakpoints in GenerateBlocks. Sam is definitely somebody that I ask all my questions of when it comes to him, and Mike Oliver are definitely the two people I turn to for any help with those things. So I appreciate you chiming in there, Sam. All right, so we have this little testimonial section next. So this should be fairly easy. Guess what? Another container. And we'll do a section, and we need to grab this color. Is this interesting at all? I feel like I'm boring everyone.
I've never built anything in blocks, so this is interesting for me.
Okay, good.
I bought Oxygen, I never used it. I'm still with Elementor. I've gotten good at performance optimization for Elementor, but I saw your thing come up. I thought, oh, this would be a good chance to take a look at what everyone else is doing.
Okay, good. Fantastic.
It's interesting. See how
Okay.
other people attack a problem.
All right, so
And how, Kyle, how does it work if you need some additional plugin or WooCommerce or something like that?
as far as being able to edit like the WooCommerce checkout pages and things like that. So there are some, I think Kadence has quite a few things on that. GeneratePress, the theme allows you to control quite a bit of the things. But I think with WordPress's next release in January, having the theme builder built into WordPress, I think you'll be able to do some more things on that. You can download the Gutenberg plugin and play with that now. I just haven't done it yet. But somebody else in here might have more thoughts on that than me. I try to stay away from WooCommerce if I can, so I don't have a lot of experience in that area.
So you are staying away from the e-commerce completely, or do you have other solutions for e-commerce besides WooCommerce?
So if I can, I mean, if it's like a digital product or something, I usually don't mind doing something like that. But if I can get away with like using a form and having a payment thing on it or connecting it to ThriveCart or something, I'm way happier to do that. WooCommerce just, it doesn't interest me at all. And I feel like you have to dedicate so much time to become good at WooCommerce, and I don't want to do that. So I've just not spent a lot of time doing it. I think I have one client that runs WooCommerce, and that's it. And that's enough for me.
Thank you.
I've been playing around with Equid, which is almost kind of like a Shopify that you can embed into WordPress. That works really good if you're doing like merch, especially if you're connecting it to like a print-on-demand service, like Printful. So that works really well. And I know there was a few conversations yesterday in the tab group about some alternatives to WooCommerce as well.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
I think it was something north. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, Equid is quite interesting. It's definitely got the benefits that you see in Shopify, but you can like put it pretty much anywhere.
And did you add it into the group? Did you mention this?
Yeah.
Super.
Yeah, and a couple of people in the chat have also said they like Equid as well. North Plugins was the one that someone was talking about yesterday.
So Kyle, when you popped that picture in, it looked like you had different settings than you did in the normal image settings. Did you?
Yeah, I was I was going to go back to that. Good eye. So I actually, on this one earlier, when I popped images in, I just used the default WordPress image block, but it has a lot to be desired. I would love if GenerateBlocks would do an image block, but they haven't done that yet. This one is one that I found, and it's inside of Stackable. I was playing with that. I know Paul at WP Tuts talks about Stackable a lot. I haven't spent much time with it at all. I absolutely hate that all these icons are these gradient colors. It drives me nuts. So I probably could never use it full time, which is a really petty thing to not like a plugin for, but it drives me bananas. But it does have tons of options here inside their image block, which are really cool. So you can set the width, you can set the height, you can change the zoom. So if I wanted to zoom in on this image, I guess what it's doing is probably setting an object fit on the image automatically. But I could go in there and change the zoom. If I wanted to add a shadow, I can add shadows to things like that. I can add border radius. I can add shapes. I can change that image fit. So you can change a bunch of like CSS filters on the image. So if I wanted to make the image really blurry and super high contrast, I could do that. So it has a ton of cool options in it. I wouldn't need it for every image. Like this image, there's no reason to use this block on there. But I have found lots of situations where like, I wish I could do a lot more with the image block than you can. And this one is just the coolest one I've seen. So I wanted to include that on this demo today. It seems like all the stackable blocks are really great. They have a lot of options, kind of like Kadence Blocks do. But I just hadn't spent much time with them. Honestly, the gradient icons over here just kill me, so I can't mess with it too much.
Is that the free version of Stackable?
It is. I have the pro version of GenerateBlocks and Kadence loaded on here, but I haven't purchased Stackable. But they have a lot of things in here that you can tell are hidden behind the.
Yeah, you can already tell it's a night and day difference between the core image block.
Yeah. It's a huge difference, but I know there's a lot of stuff inside their pro version that's not inside the free version. And the reason it interests me the most is just Paul from WP Tuts talking about it and how much he likes doing dynamic content stuff. I do as well. And the dynamic content still has something to be desired inside of the blocks ecosystem as a whole. But he really likes the way that Stackable does their dynamic stuff. So that's why I downloaded it to play with it and see what I could figure out with that. All right. So here's where we're going to get to a little bit more of a challenge. And here's where we're probably going to start talking about Kadence. So in this section, we have a headline, and then we have a post grid, we have a button, and then we have an accordion. So we could get away with some of this stuff. GenerateBlocks doesn't have an accordion, so I'm not going to be able to use that. We could do a few things to try to make this happen using generate tools. But to me, it's more work than I probably want to put into this demo when we could just basically knock this out with Kadence in a couple seconds. So that's what we'll do. So jump in here, we'll use a container. I'm still going to use GenerateBlocks containers because I like them. 8024. We'll drop a headline in here and we'll use GenerateBlocks for that as well. And we'll see this. All right. And I know we're going to need some space at the bottom of this. And maybe if Sam's still in here, I know he can do a lot more things with GenerateBlocks than I can. So he might be able to tell us a way better way to do this with GenerateBlocks than me having to do this with Kadence. But inside Kadence, I have this post grid / carousel block. And there's actually one in here. When we go in here to set the initial style, this basically is going to do exactly what we need from the start. So we're not going to have to do a lot of work on this. So yeah, so we can see in here, if you've not used Kadence before, and this is the first thing you're looking at, first time you're looking at it, all their blocks basically look like this, as in the fact that there's lots and lots of settings, which I said is, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. It's a good thing because I'm being able to do something with it I'm not able to do straight out of GenerateBlocks. But it's a bad thing because when I just need a headline, I don't necessarily want 500 options. So it's totally a preference thing. I can totally understand why somebody would prefer Kadence over Generate. I can understand why I prefer Generate over Kadence. So I think it's only preference. So I did go ahead and load blog posts in here. Another cool thing about this little post thing is they give you an image aspect ratio option. So we can change that to look a little bit more like what we have. I'm not using the same thumbnails on all of them, but I think you get the idea. The below title meta, we don't need the author and we don't need the category because they're not showing that here. And I did play with this a little bit to see if I was going to be able to do those hover effects where they have the shadow, and I could not find a way to do that inside of Kadence from the UI itself. So we'll have to jump into some CSS to do that. But what else do we have? Or let's see, we also have a more from our blog button. So we'll go ahead and add that before we jump in and start writing CSS. Actually, we'll probably go ahead and do the accordion too. And then that way we can kind of, we're nearly done with this page at that point. Did this say more from our blog? More from and this is more like this button at the very top, except the colors. I'm going to copy those styles. Again, I would probably set up global styles for these if I was actually building this page. So I didn't have to worry about changing these if I change my mind down the road. Blue, and then it goes to solid. All right, so that pretty much does that. And then we need to add this accordion they have here. And I think I'll be able to get it pretty close. We'll probably won't get it exact without some CSS, but I don't know how important that is. So this accordion is also inside of Kadence. So we can set the initial style here. This first blank one is easy enough. The way they do their accordions is pretty neat too. The way you can just add items. It's all very, very simple. You can see the different panes in here. So we only need one. All right. So we have a title in here that says frequently asked questions. And then when we open it up, we have all of the questions inside one of accordion, which I kind of like. You know, we usually do like one accordion for each question and you open up one at a time. I kind of like this better because it's not a bunch of accordions on the screen.
Especially if you only have that amount of content, that actually works really good.
Yeah. So one thing is this is not taking up the full width. So what I'm probably going to do is inside of the actual pane of the accordion, I'm going to drop a, come on. I'm going to drop a grid in here and it's only going to be one column, but we're going to do it like 66% width. And then we can probably just copy all of this text and we'll just do a paragraph, but we'll have to go back and change it. Yeah, definitely not a list or a quote. Okay.
Hey, Carl.
Yeah.
Question about the post list that you had. So you said that you hadn't found a way to do it without using Kadence. Have you tried the query loop / post list that's a native Gutenberg block? Yeah, and I feel like it has a lot to be desired still. It feels very clunky. Have you used it? I've used it on one or two, and I think that, you know, for a first edition, I think it's okay. Sure. But yeah, I think it could be improved.
So we could absolutely do that on this call, but I feel like that would be by the time I got it looking like I need to. Oh shit! By the time I got it looking like I needed to, our time would be up. So for being practical, I just thought using a widget that we already have access to made more sense. No, I just changed all these to H3s, and I'm going to bet you now that these aren't even, they're H4s. Well, good. I still had one to go. H4. Excuse me.
I absolutely love the simplicity of being able to just type in and make changes and copy and paste without having to worry about it pulling over the code like you did with Elementor. It's so much easier.
Yeah, and what's nice too is like I needed headings text excuse me, I can't talk. You know, if I was doing it in Elementor, I guess you could drag in a text and then change all the stuff inside there, but I would probably drag in a heading, then drag in a text widget, then drag in a heading and drag in it. And I was able to just paste it all in here and then change them really quickly, which is to me a lot simpler. All right, so let's look. Change some of these title settings. I don't know exactly what font size everything was, so we're just going to eyeball it.
What?
Small one.
Yes, inside the rack.
I want a title icon, but I do think this icon is different. I don't know if we
Okay,
should
I
tell
got
them.
a question.
Yeah.
About just mixing and matching block sets. You know, do you have any concerns about maintaining multiple licenses into the future, and also having a sheer amount of like millions of different blocks, especially if you're passing this off to a client?
Yeah, it certainly is not preferred, right? I mean, if you could get away with using one set, you're probably better off. I tested because I was looking at it more from like the performance side, like, am I going to hurt things by loading multiple block packages in? So I did a very unscientific test and came to the conclusion that no, it doesn't really affect performance. One or two more resources that have to load and a few kilobytes of size. And other than that, I didn't notice any difference. Obviously, the more license you have to buy, that's something to think about. And I have run into that. Like, you know, I have old Beaver Builder sites and then Elementor sites and Oxygen sites and now a bunch of block sites. So it just over time, it keeps adding up. So yeah, I mean, I think if that was a primary concern, something like Stackable or Kadence probably makes more sense because there's so much more already built in. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, it does. And anything about the client side, especially if you add some global styles to one block type and then clients are using, you know, say the image block from a different block set, and, you know, you got mix and match, you know, as they start building stuff out.
Yeah, so that's definitely a concern. Most of my clients very rarely get into their websites, so I don't worry about that with most of my clients too much. But the other thing I'll say is I did build one for somebody not that long ago, and kind of like this page, I had one or two things on the site where I needed Kadence, and I did all the rest in GenerateBlocks. And then I only activated those one or two blocks inside Kadence and just used them where I had to. So I've kind of minimized the amount of damage, you know, and they can't, even though Kadence is installed, they'd have to like go find Kadence, go to the settings, find that there's things that aren't turned on, turn them on, and then go screw things up. And most of my clients probably aren't going to do that. So it would definitely depend on who your clients are and what kind of headache they like to cause you.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. So I know we can get this thing a whole lot closer. I kind of feel like maybe I'm wasting time changing the colors of text to match exactly at this point. Do y'all agree, or do you want to see me try to get it as perfect as possible?
I think that's good.
Okay. I agree. Before you refresh it here. So now we have our post, we have this little button, and we have our accordion working. It actually has a border on it on theirs. You can add a border in here. Let's see, border color. Let's see, title border, 1 pixel. Let's see if that fixed it. It didn't, but we get the right idea.
Another question I have, Carl, is you said that I think a while ago I saw that for ultra wide screens you have a setup that you use to kind of like box the layout. I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah.
So basically, same thing on this site here. What Wave has done, and it's like that on their their site. They've actually set the max container on any of this content to 1600 pixels. So if I mimicked a giant screen by zooming my browser way out, because I'm scientific like that, you know, the content is never going to span the whole width. Whereas if you went to like my site where I haven't done this and zoom way out, you can see like these full width things go the full width, which to me looks stupid. So this is something I definitely need to fix on my site. So Wave solves this because they're only going to like 1600 pixels. This look is okay to me. I feel like there's too much of like this side area here that's nothing. So typically what I'll do is the same exact setup, but I'll just block it off at 1920 pixels, because if you go look in Google Analytics, a lot of people on their desktop size is about that. And that's what my resolution is. And I'm the most important one that's looking at it. So we'll just go with what looks best to me, right? So I'll usually just block it off at 1920, so that way we're never going to have content going any wider than that. So I was able, we'll see if we can come back to that if we have enough time, because there is some things you can do inside GeneratePress to set that up pretty easily. All right, so let's see here. We need to try to do this little glow thing on Hover maybe. So let's inspect this and see what we can find. This is one of those points where I went through on the post widget and couldn't find where you could add a outer glow or like a drop shadow to these wrappers in Kadence. KT blocks, post grid item. My guess is it's going to be this selector. So anybody who's good at CSS, just forgive everything you're seeing right now, because I'm not, but we're just going to try it for fun. Okay. So don't yell at me. We're going to try to do the little box shadow when we hover on these things. My super scientific way to see if I've targeted something right is to do display none on it. And then we'll see. Yeah. So I've at least targeted it, because it's going nowhere. So I'm going to cheat, and we'll just start with going box shadow CSS, and I'll get somewhere for us to start. And this is usually how I start all my CSS, is by just copying and pasting somebody else's until I can get it close. I can't be the only one, right? So now if we hover over this, we can see we have our box shadow. But what we probably want is something, theirs doesn't look like it has like a vertical or horizontal, but it does grow quite a bit. Honestly, that's probably close enough for our demo purposes. So yeah, so there's a fairly easy way to fix that problem. Like I said, you know, it depends on who you are and what your skill set is. And a year ago, I literally couldn't have done what I just did right now, which was like find the right selector and copy some CSS and then change it slightly to make it do what I want. But because I've spent more time on it, I can do that now. So for people that write CSS all the time, this is no big deal to go fix. If you don't write any CSS, then that's definitely something to consider when you run into these things with, you know, with Elementor or with Oxygen or something. You could have done all this inside the editor. But you can't do that inside of all of these blocks.
Another trick I use is I just go through the selectors and then add a red border to it.
Yeah.
So then as you go through, you can find the right one.
Yeah, absolutely. That's perfect. All right. So that kind of solves that for us. Oh, I see my border has showed up now, and that border is ugly. So we have to go back and fix it. I put the border around the whole thing. We just want a border. I think they have a border on the top and the bottom, which would be here. All right, let's reset and see where we're at and what we have time for left. And maybe we can vote on what we should end up doing here, because we've been at this about an hour now, but we've made quite a bit of progress. I did go through and like, how quickly could I build this out? I think I could build out this page in about 20 minutes if I wasn't talking to people. But I think we've done okay for having talked with folks. So what we have left is kind of this call to action section and a footer. So we could build those out, but we're going to be doing many of the same things, except we're going to have to embed a third-party form here. And then the footer, we can either just build a section in the page, or we can actually go build a real footer, or we could talk about some of the other things like the global styles that have come up, or the site wrappers, I guess you would call them. Does anybody have any preference on what they'd like to see?
There's a few people talk about global styles. I, for
Okay.
one, that's my vote.
James, you're killing it with moderating the
I'm
comments.
taking, well, because Matt's not here, so I figured I'd be sort of Matt's role today.
Okay, perfect.
Number 2 guy in the number 1 WordPress community.
All right, so we'll look at global styles. So let's see here. I'm gonna switch gears onto a different install because I've set so much of this up already on a site that I think we could benefit from fast forwarding to some of this being done. All right. So inside of GenerateBlocks, you have this global styles panel. And in here, you can create multiple different kinds of global styles. I'm going to do a terrible job of completely explaining this because I don't think I fully understand it. So if Mike Oliver's in here and wants to chime in, or Sam wants to chime in, you're welcome to. But you can create different kinds of global styles. From what I understand, you don't want to go crazy creating a million of these posts. You know, it looks like a post for your global styles. So I do kind of batch them by what type of element they are. So I have some global styles for buttons. I have some global styles for containers. So if we open up this buttons one, we'll see I've created a few different kind of buttons here. So this one here, I've given the name, it automatically prepins whatever the element is with GenerateBlocks, and then whatever the element is. And then you get to name this last part. So I have a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary here on these buttons. So if we go to this homepage, which is just a style guide, you can see I've set up these buttons here, and I've linked these buttons to the global buttons. So to show you how that would work, if I just said, okay, I don't want this button to be orange anymore, I want it to be blue, and let's say I've used it all across the site, I can update that, and then when I go on this front end, it's now blue because it's connected to that global style. Let me undo that so I don't come back later and wonder what the hell I did wrong to my site. So we'll look at this, how this works like in a practical sense. Does that all make sense? Like you're creating some global elements?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, so let's just say I'm creating a new page now. And I want to throw a button on it, and I want to use one of those global buttons. Well, I can click on my button, and over here it says use global style. I can click that, and then I have all my global styles that I picked to choose from. So I could pick that primary, and then boom, I have my primary button here. If I wanted it to be my secondary, it could be my secondary. And so the benefit of this is, you know, kind of like you would set up classes in Oxygen or Webflow, or if you're just hand coding site, is you can set the style in one place and then control it all the way across the site. So I will use this if, let's say we have some kind of treatment to a heading that isn't available in the customizer settings. I might set up some headings specific to that. In fact, in here, I have global styles for some headings for things like the little badges or pills that you see all the time. So these kinds of little badges, these kind of little pills, and then like what I would call like a pre-headline. So if you have like a tiny little headline above an H2 or something. So I've set up some like global styles for those things, so I don't have to go and style those 500 times. So all that I've set up in here, and then that way, if you ever need to make changes to those things in the future, it's really easy to do. So I've done it for, you know, I typically do it for things like buttons because you're going to reuse those all over the site. I do it also for containers. So if we put a new container in here, you can see if I use global styles, I have several different containers set up. So an extra large one that's going to be larger than whatever my default content width is, because sometimes you might actually need something that breaks those bounds. The default content width, and then large, medium, small, and extra small, all of them, the container widths are just getting smaller. So if, for instance, I had this default setting here where we had, I don't know, I keep Taco Ipsum on my text expander, so we use that. So we have this section where we want the text to span that entire width there, which is just the default one. And underneath it, we wanted to have another section where the text was really small in the middle. Well, I can use this global style for extra small, and it's just bringing in that width for whatever I've set for those containers. So you can control all those things inside the global styles and then be able to use them throughout your site, which is obviously a lot better in the future. If you want to change something, you can change it globally across the site. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Couple more questions about using blocks for custom post types. I guess like in Elementary, you would create like a template for custom post type and apply that to like the single pages.
Okay, so the only way I've done this in blocks is through the Generate family of tools. Probably be more than we could go over creating, but we could look at my website and we'll just use this as a guinea pig. So you have to combine a couple things here. You have to combine what's inside GeneratePress and what's inside GenerateBlocks. So this is really only going to make sense if you're using both of those tools, but inside of GeneratePress is an option called Elements. And Elements give you the option to build out things like blocks that can be reusable. You can do hooks, you can change layouts of pages, and you can create headers. So what you do to create, let's say like you want to change the default blog, individual blog single post template, is you would create a block for that and then use some dynamic content. So I have some of those in here. So I would set up an element for single post blog, which is what I've done, which is a block element. So we'll go inside of here and look at it. Once you create that, then you can go in here and tell it what kind of element type it is. It's a content template because it's the content for my single post. And then down here at the bottom, you can choose where the display rules are. So this is similar to Elementor or Beaver Themer or any of those tools. So we're basically saying use this content layout only on post, and I want to use it on all posts. You could exclude things. You could change the users, logged in, logged out, those kinds of things. So then I just went out and built this this layout using GenerateBlocks blocks and then dynamic content. So here we have a button, and this button is using their dynamic content field to bring in the category. Here is just a headline, and we're using the dynamic content to bring in the title. Here's this is actually a special block GenerateBlocks has for dynamic content. So it's called a dynamic content block. So this is, oops, shit, I didn't mean to change it. So that's bringing in the post excerpt, which you can see over here. And you can change the post excerpt length. This is a featured image or a dynamic image block, which I'm just using to bring in the featured image. And then I have like a container here or a grid here with a couple columns. Here's more dynamic content with the author name. Here's more dynamic content with the post date. And then here's the actual post content from the post itself. And then this little author box, which has no dynamic content whatsoever. So that kind of shows you what it looks like on the back end. But if we go to the front end, I don't want to make any of those changes. If we go to the front end and pull up this post, now you can see how it's bringing in all the dynamic content for the post. So the category here, the title, the excerpt, the featured image, my name, post date, all the post content, scroll all the way down. And then here we have the author box. So the elements functionality is part of GeneratePress. And then you would use that in conjunction with blocks to use the blocks that have dynamic capabilities. So you can do this on things like custom post types. It's certainly, I don't think it's anywhere near as powerful as something like Elementor or Beaver Themer or Oxygen as far as doing all that dynamic content, but you can typically get any of the typical easy things done. So that's a half-hearted endorsement, I think.
With all of your, I know so you've done Elementor, Oxygen, Webflow, now blocks. Which is your favorite? What are you favoring these days? What's the flavor of the month?
So today, no doubt, if I have a new project, I'm going to try to do it just like we did today in the building out the Wave site with GeneratePress, GenerateBlocks, and then if I have to use some other kind of block package, I'll throw that in there as well. Because of the simplicity, because of the performance here. In fact, we did no performance optimization to this page we built right now. So let's just go see what it does off the bat. This is on a shared or on a Cloudways server, like a 1 gig server. It's on a crappy server that has 50 other sites on it. So we'll preface that before I run this. Because it's so easy to build things, rapid to build things, because it's simplistic, because my clients could go in there and change things really easily, and because I can get extremely great performance out of it out of the box, that's the way I want to go if I can. For more complex sites, I just got done with the site that I looked at the project brief and the design the client brought and said, there's no way I can build this out without tons and tons of custom code if I was going to do blocks. So in that case, we went with Oxygen and built it out with Oxygen. So here you go. Here's no optimizations done whatsoever. We're getting an 84 on mobile for performance. I'm extremely confident we could get that to 95 plus with like a caching plugin and perf matters, and we'd be done. So those things are huge for me. I want the performance stuff to be really done nicely. But for a small little brochure, mom and pop, even my website's got nothing fancy on it whatsoever. Like Oxygen to me is just way overkill in all the setup and coming up with all the classes and stuff. Even if you use a framework, for me, it just feels like way too much setup work to do something really simple. But it's totally preference. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. That's just my answer.
Cool. Are you designing in like Figma, and then what's your process like for?
Yeah, so I've been designing in XD quite a bit. Figma's great, but I've been in Adobe products my entire life, basically. So actually for probably more than half of my life, I've spent in Adobe products. So XD just feels more comfortable to me. So I'll usually mock up like a home page, an interior page, and maybe a blog layout or another key page that's important, just to get sign-off on those, and then build those out in the browser, and then base the designs of all the other pages off of those without actually designing every one of them. Because designing 50 pages that all look alike seems like extra work to me for no extra reason.
Totally.
Every now and then I'll just start building right in GenerateBlocks, but I feel like I'm less creative doing it that way for sure. All right. Any other questions?
Yes. Kyle?
Yeah.
How do you see the future of GeneratePress with the new version of WordPress?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've started using GeneratePress really, really early on in my days of doing WordPress, which isn't that long, 4.5 years now, something like that. What I really appreciate about GeneratePress, and I was talking to their the founder of GeneratePress, Tom, last night about this, is like they are slower to add new things. It does take a while to get some of the updates, but they're so thoughtful and so careful with everything that they do that I've literally taken their alpha versions of updates and put them on live sites because it doesn't worry me to do it. Like I almost doubt there's going to be any bugs in it. So they're just so careful and cautious with things and thoughtful with what they introduce into their ecosystem that I know they're not going to bloat it out. I know there's not going to be problems down the line. I know they're not going to add something and say, well, now the backwards compatibility is gone and you can't fix any of those things now. I see them as the antithesis of something like Elementor, where Elementor is just full steam ahead, going to go forward no matter what, and even if it breaks some things. So they're the antithesis of that for me. So it's slower going than something like, if you're looking at comparing block packages and block themes and stuff like that, they're going to be slower moving than something like Kadence. But for me, the reliability and the thoughtfulness they put into it, that's what sells it for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. Have you thought about using Oxygen with a block plugin like GenerateBlocks in terms of using Oxygen as, I guess, like a theme? So you build out your header, your footer, and your templates, but then using the GenerateBlocks alongside to build out the inner pages, which, you know, gives clients more control over those inner pages, I guess.
Yeah, so I thought of this too, and Jonathan, if he's still on here, he asked me about that too. The problem that I have is when you install and activate Oxygen, it completely disables the theme inside WordPress. And to make blocks really useful, you need to be like, you need to have that connection with the theme that's controlling all the global styles for things. So you're not ad hoc having to add all your styles to every block every time. And so when you disable the theme, you have some issues with things like that. So for instance, on the admin bars website, that's basically what's been done on any of our posts. So everything in here was built with Oxygen, except when I write a blog post, I'm not going in and writing the blog post in Oxygen. I'm doing that on the backend editor and using blocks to do that. So for instance, that's not a good example. This blog post that I did earlier this week or a month ago, I can't remember, time doesn't exist. I used GenerateBlocks for this entire layout. And so in here was like a container, and then in here was a grid, and I was able to get kind of the look I was wanting to, and basically, you know, just this section right here is blocks and everything around it is being controlled by Oxygen. But it was a lot more work. And then I run into issues where I did this shitty, this is my fault, but I did a shitty little light mode, dark mode switcher. But because I didn't target all the things in blocks, it didn't actually work on this. So I've kind of ruined it here and I have to fix that. Is it possible? Yes, it's possible, but I feel like it's so much work. You'd be better off just going one way or the other.
Kyle, that gave me a thought. Because you can add classes to the block elements, could you add a custom selector in Oxygen and style it using the Oxygen interface that outputs the CSS, and then that maybe solves the problem of the disconnect between your theme and Oxygen if you're running blocks?
Yeah,
I haven't tried that, but I feel like it might work.
Let's find out. We can find that out pretty quickly.
Yeah,
That's a
because then
good
if you have like a heading style class, like an H2 or whatever,
Yeah.
and then it has red and font size and font weight and all that, and then you just stick that on your heading element, maybe it doesn't look right in the back end, but on the front end it should.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee it won't look right on the back end. There might be some ways to like enqueue those style sheets into the back end, but I'm not entirely certain. We're just gonna make the admin bars website look stupid for a minute. We'll add some text and we'll give this a class of Jonathan made me do it. I'm gonna copy that so I don't forget it. Oh, there we go. Jonathan made me do it. And we'll say this class is the text is a funky pink color and the font size is 42 and it's right aligned. That should be enough for us to figure it out. So apologies to anybody who goes to the admin bars website right now. Bar.com.
So an idea I am looking into kind of along the lines is using something like SAS, which allow you to apply classes to selectors. So if you've got classes within Oxygen already made, you can apply your classes without putting a class on them per se. So you can target all of your headings with inside of Gutenberg or your GenerateBlocks without actually having to put classes on them directly, which is a really good idea because it takes away the need to put classes on and relying on clients having to do that kind of, and it still is within the same type of ecosystem, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. And as you're talking, I'm going to delete all this now because it's live on our website, but what Jonathan's suggestion, building out the class in Oxygen and then just applying that class to something in blocks, that worked totally fine.
That's actually extremely legit. I mean, that opens up a lot of possibility.
Yeah, so maybe the idea of combining Oxygen and blocks is more useful than I can think of right now. Right now, it's just really me using it to give blog posts a little bit more design.
I think if I can chime in on that, one thing that I run into, being of course so ingrained in the Oxygen ecosystem, especially for client sites, is that the interface is really difficult to navigate for clients, even though there's a client mode and you can hide different elements for different user levels. But even then I default to ACF, and then you have to build everything manually for them to edit. And even then, if they're not somewhat technical, it's still not great. So I've been leaning more towards Gutenberg lately and exploring it with you. So this is incredibly valuable. And then adding in this means you could do sort of your outer container, like you talked about on the admin bar site, where you can control the sidebars and the templates and all that kind of stuff. And then add in those classes means, whatever the client does to the element in Gutenberg, hopefully it's not, overridden. But
right.
That seems really exciting to me, and something I actually want to explore more. That seems really cool.
Yeah, I actually watched a video this morning from somebody in one of our table groups that he's exploring a completely different system. But what his problem with Gutenberg and blocks is that there's no separation between the design and the content. It's all kind of one thing. Whereas, if you're using like the client editing mode in Oxygen, they're really just more focused on what the content is, changing images, changing text and things like that, but not destroying an entire layout. And there's not really any good safeguards inside of blocks to be able to do that, because it's all kind of one thing. It's not like you have a HTML file and a CSS file and you just don't give them access to the CSS file so they can't screw up the design of the site, So I know that's another concern people have. It doesn't concern me a whole lot just because my clients don't really get in there a whole lot, but definitely something to think of. All right, I think we will wrap this up because my throat, I don't think, can take much more talking, and we've done this for about an hour and a half. So hopefully people found some kind of value out of this, learned something from it. Maybe it inspired them to try blocks. Maybe it told them, hey, blocks definitely isn't for me. I guess either way is a win on that. Finding out a little something. I really enjoy rebuilding pages. It's something I've done as a designer. It's something I did for years and years before I ever got to web, was like find a design online or out of a magazine or something and try to recreate it on my own. I think it's such a great way to learn how to do things. So I do this all the time I find some kind of cool layout online and then I hop into one of my demo installs and try to recreate it myself, because it makes me a better designer, seeing how people did things and knowing how they space things and how their systems work and stuff. All that helps me out. So I really enjoy doing this kind of thing. So if people enjoyed it, leave a comment in this post or something that's in the admin bar and let me know. That's super helpful for me to know if this is something I should schedule doing more often, or if nobody's going to show up, then I don't have to bother with it. So, but yeah, I appreciate everybody coming today. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it, and I've already spent a little bit of money and bought some plugins and some Chrome extensions.
Fantastic. Well, James, I appreciate your assist here in keeping an eye on the chat and keeping that going for us. That was super helpful. I should have thought of that before I started this.
No worries.
All right. Awesome. Well, if I don't talk to everybody before then, I hope everybody has a good holiday, Merry Christmas, whatever thing you're celebrating. I hope it's awesome. Take some time off, get away from the computer, spend some time with family. If anybody, I did want to mention one more thing. I made a post inside the group yesterday. Faye, who I was on here a second ago, I don't know if she still is. She had the great idea of asking in the group if anybody was affected by the tornadoes that went through Arkansas and Kentucky and Tennessee. We did end up having somebody in the group. His name is Jeremy. He's inside the admin bar. His house was destroyed by the tornadoes. They lost an animal. I'm sure Christmas presents, all of their belongings and stuff destroyed. There's a pinned post inside the group right now at the very top, like a featured post with his GoFundMe on there. I think yesterday when he finally gave it to me, there was like $350 raised. Right now he's at like $33,850 with a $5,000 goal. Tons of tab people have donated in there and put tab in the comments, which is cool to see. And I'm really, I'm sure really confusing for his family who wonders what the hell tab is, which is just fun. So if you have $5 or something you can spare for a family that's going through something pretty difficult right here around Christmas, Christmas is a great time to drop money in a little red kettle or whatever you're doing, and you have no idea where that money goes. This money goes to right here to somebody inside of our group who contributes to the community we have. So if you have a few dollars to send to his family, I'm sure he'd really appreciate it. So all right, that's it. I'm gonna go not talk for an hour. I'm sorry.
Is it turkey tacos for Christmas dinner at the Van Dusen house?
Always tacos. I'll make a taco out of anything. All right,
that's a t-shirt.
Yeah, no doubt. I got my taco email address, so I'm good for now. All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon. Everybody have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll talk to you soon.
Happy holiday.